Good Sunday morning, everybody, and welcome to Flashpoint. I'm Jason Colthorpe. We are diving into the governor's race on the GOP side with the frontrunner and the newcomer. John James and Perry Johnson are here to address the shots each of them took at one another this week. Plus, we sit down with new DTE CEO Joi Harris to get her vision for the utility as the state navigates an influx of data centers. We're going to try and warm things up for you right now on Flashpoint. Well, happy February, everybody. The last 2 weeks, we've talked about the governor's race, either with poll numbers or with our insiders. And well, now we have a couple more developments. Number one, Perry Johnson is again in the race after failing to even make it on the ballot in 2022 because of those faulty signatures that were gathered. Second, John James, who has found himself atop the polling, appears to be ready to kickstart his campaign. Whether he's ready or not, the rest of the GOP field is coming after him, including Johnson. I was able to sit down with both of them this week. Let's start with my conversation with John James. All right, we're joined now this morning with John James, Congressman. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. So you've run for Senate. You've run for Congress, now you're running for governor. I notice politicians usually do that in reverse order. So why do you want to be governor?
I want to be governor because I love Michigan. Michigan is a place that my father came not just for a better job, but for a better life. He left the Jim Crow South to be able to pursue the American dream. But now, I feel like his grandchildren, my children, might have to leave to find the American dream. And I think that's wrong. So many people around the state of Michigan are desperate for hope. They're desperate for a shot. And I believe that the right leadership that can set the culture to create an environment where everyone can pursue and achieve the American dream is what we desperately need. We're going to be focusing on academic excellence, economic mobility, public safety, a government you can trust, and also healthy families. These are the things that I hear from people all over the state of folks that they want leaders to focus on.
You mentioned education. I want to talk about that in a moment. First, I'm sure you noticed you have a new competitor as of Monday morning, Perry Johnson, now in the Republican field. When asked about his age, which is 78, one of his strategists said, he's got more energy than anyone I know and certainly more than John James. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I've never lost a primary, and that gentleman has never made a ballot. So if he thinks he can outwork a ranger statewide, I invite him to try. But people who I engage with around the state are really excited for somebody who has fresh ideas, who's not a politician, who's a combat veteran who understands what it takes to keep Michiganders safe, because they've done it before. Someone who's a businessman who understands what it takes to grow jobs in the automotive industry, because they've done it before. And also a public servant who's currently delivering for Michigan as it is, fighting for our rights and bringing resources back. These are the types of things that are resonating, which is the reason why I'm nearly 50% in the primary and 40 points ahead of my next closest competitor.
Speaking of those competitors, you listed a lot of things, but compared to Mike Cox, Tom Leonard, Eric Nesbitt, and the rest, is there one thing you point to that separates you from those guys?
Yeah, I don't need the job. Among those guys, you have folks who are chasing a job, they're running because they're term limited, or they're looking for a legacy. I don't need the job. I have a passion for service. I'm here to serve the people, submit to the Lord, and make Michigan a better place. I have the skill sets to produce, and I've made this happen in the real world.
You've seen the situation in Minneapolis. ICE officers facing off with protesters. If you become governor of Michigan, what would your plan be if that sort of thing erupted in a Michigan city?
A couple things. First, mission first, people always. It's been my mantra for decades. We have to accomplish a mission, but we can't forget who we're putting first in the first place, the people. Is a heartbreaking situation which is imminently avoidable, and the way to avoid that is to abide by the law. We have to abide by the law. We have to make sure that we're respecting life, we are training our officials, and we also need to make sure that unlike what happened in Minneapolis, other states that are complying with the law don't see occurrences like this. I also think it's tragic that in a state that we found $9 billion in fraud, political leaders are encouraging this disobedience, this civil disobedience that is turning into violent insurrection. We deserve better. We need to abide by the law. And of course, we can do all of that while sadly being upset that another American has died in this tragedy.
As a former military, when it comes to, and ICE isn't necessarily military, but they're also not trained law enforcement, do you oppose having actual military in American streets? It's been floated here in Michigan, so I ask that could happen if you were governor.
Well, like I've always said, as governor of the state of Michigan, we won't need to activate the National Guard. President Trump wouldn't need to send these types of forces because we will cooperate and we will abide by federal law. No one's above the law, right? We all agree to that? So if no one's above the law, how is it that some people and politicians believe they are? I think that we absolutely must abide by federal law, do everything we can to keep our streets safe. And folks aren't reporting that violent crime is down 20% over the past year. That's for a reason. So you look at states like Texas and other states that are actually complying with federal law, you don't see anything like this. You don't see any reports of the thousands of criminals who've actually been locked up, violent criminals. You're not hearing about the 11-year-old who was raped in front of her 10-year-old sister. You don't see any of that because there's a political agenda that's seeking to draw division. And I want to bring unity. I want to lead understanding what it takes to bring people together. And I recognize that there's a higher standard when you have force behind you. And I'm looking forward to holding myself and those around me to that higher standard.
You mentioned the criminals that they're rounding up, which I think all of Americans probably can agree on. But some reports say, or studies say, 75% of the people being detained have no criminal record outside of the government saying the crime is being here illegally. Haven't committed one here. Does that justify some of the tactics you see with the way ICE is rounding people up?
This was only an issue when President Trump got elected. You didn't see any riots during Biden's time, and when Clinton said these things, he was lauded. And when Obama was in office, Democrats were taking ride-alongs with ICE. The fact of the matter is this isn't necessarily about ICE or anything else. It's about being against Trump. Regardless, we need to have a constitution, we need to have a rule of law that doesn't engage in personalities, but will abide by the law, make sure we follow the law, and keep all Americans safe. That's what I'm going to be focused on, and not choosing favorites, but abiding by the law.
If you become governor, you'll likely have a partner in the state house, being Speaker Matt Hall, who is very up on cutting the budget, reducing the budget. This last time around I think they reduced it by about $6 billion. What in the state budget would you like to cut, or what's your view of the state budget? Too big, too small, or right on the mark?
Well, I will say that Matt he has his heart in the right place, and I think he's doing a good job. That's the type of leadership that we desperately need, and more conservative leadership is on the way. But the fact is, Gretchen Whitmer's budget is $20 billion bigger than it was just 6 years ago. Remember what was happening 6 years ago? COVID. Exactly. And so you're telling me that we're still strapped for cash and we're spending $20 billion more of our hard-earned money. I actually think that we need to audit on day one to figure out what they're doing with the cash we've already sent them. When you look at a state like Minnesota, that's much smaller than the state of Michigan. They found $9 billion in Minnesota. How much more money do you think they're going to find here when we look under the hood and we determine where they've been sending our tax dollars?
Is there anything that stands out to you now that you think this has got to go, that's got to go? What would be your first cut?
First one is MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation. You see all the money from strategic funds that are going to companies and corporate welfare, and they're not creating the jobs they're going to say. The press release politics is going to end when I become governor. And also looking at HHS. We absolutely must have a strong healthcare system, but the waste, fraud, and abuse needs to be cut out. And then also there's been hundreds of millions of dollars wasted in SNAP. We must take care of people who are in desperate need. We must take care of poor people. That is an obligation. But people who are stealing from poor people must be held accountable.
Talk to me about your education plan. Michigan's still struggling as one of the worst states in America with kids. How do you raise reading and math scores?
We're going to focus on the fundamentals. We're going to focus on truancy, numeracy, and literacy. We're going to work on things that have actually worked in places like Mississippi. We're going to drive accountability. I'm going to work to make sure that the Board of Education reports to the governor so that the person who has the tools and the resource to actually fix it can do it. We're also going to, on day one, opt in to a federal program that I just helped pass this past year that will give options to parents for scholarships to be able to send their children where they'll be safest and most successful. I believe that education is a basic civil right, and anyone who stands in the way of those civil rights must be held accountable. As governor and as somebody who's gotten to this point, having 2 master's degrees, being served in the military, run a business and growing it, and now serving in Congress, I am the walking result of the American dream, and it's because my grandmama taught us the importance of education. Every child and every parent should have the opportunity to have a better life through our education, and they have been failed by the current administration.
Congressman John James joining us on Flashpoint. Appreciate your time. We're right back with more after this. Thanks, sir. Appreciate it. Back here on Flashpoint with Republican gubernatorial candidate Perry Johnson, who just got in the race this week. Thank you for being here, first of all. And second, go back 4 years. By your own admission, you said, I got in the race, really didn't know much about politics. What have you learned over these 4 years?
I could write a book. What's involved in politics, it's amazing. Politics is pretty much like a business. And when I went in, I really knew nothing. As a matter of fact, I think I was having lunch with John Engler in January. We had a 4-hour lunch, and it was at that point that I decided, okay, I'll enter this race. So February the 13th, I entered the race. I had one person working for me, literally, one guy. He said, yeah, and of course, I didn't have any idea. I said, 30,000 names. How am I going to get 30,000 names?
Yeah.
Signatures. I said, I wouldn't even know what to do. He said, oh, we take care of that, no issue.
No issue. Well, I'm glad you brought it up.
Well,
assuming you're not going to make the same mistake twice, what are you doing this time around to make sure the signatures you do gather are legitimate and you get on the ballot?
Well, I have a major team.
Okay.
In fact, because I'm like the quality guru, you go into a company, they hire you because they want you to become the guy that's going to make it more efficient and produce quality. So you go in, you find out what you need to do. Now I have the team of teams. Who's the best person in the world? I hired the people that were in charge of Trump's access. So I have that group.
Okay.
That's not enough. I have another group. I decided we're going to augment the process by also getting the cell numbers so we can go through 100% verification on each one. That way I know that I will have proof. Even if they do try to get me off, we'll be able to have some proof that all of these signatures were valid.
If you become governor, by the way, you'll be turning 79 in your first month. For those who think
Oh, I see.
Next year.
That's a year.
Yes,
from now.
if you're governor. What would your response be to those who think that's just too old for somebody to become governor?
Well, I don't know. Do you think Trump is aging away and he doesn't have any energy and can't do his work? I don't know anybody who works harder than Trump. He's what, a year and a half, 2 years older than I am?
Correct.
So
some have pointed to some health issues that he's had recently, but yeah.
Well, I have no health issues.
Gotcha.
As a matter of fact, I take no medication, and I swim every day, and I work out every day, and I doubt that you find anybody that has much more energy than I do.
Well, I'm glad you put it that way, because that's exactly what your campaign said when you launched it earlier this week. And the rest of that quote was that I have more energy, certainly, than John James does. Well, I asked John James about that earlier this week, and his quote in response was, I've never lost a primary, and he's never made a ballot, and you're not going to outwork a ranger. What's your response to John James?
Well, what I can tell you is that if you did a survey, you could ask who works more, Perry Johnson or John James. I think you're going to find 90% of the people, certainly anybody that knows me, will say Perry Johnson probably works 3 times as much as John James. But the bottom line is, the proof is in the pudding. I started, I don't know, what was it, 40 years ago, building my first company. Over time, we built, I don't know, maybe it's 80 companies around the world. I am in basically the quality and efficiency business. That's what I do. We became the dominant name, certainly throughout the world. And I've spent my entire life bringing quality and efficiency to businesses, and I do it today. And I love it. And when you love something, it's not work. So in terms of that, it's just fun. So if you want to say I have more fun than John James, I probably do.
You've seen the situation happening in Minneapolis. As governor, what would you do if a situation like that with ICE or CBP forces facing off in a Michigan city, whether it be something like Detroit or Dearborn, where it could become deadly with protesters? What's your plan if that happens in Michigan?
Well, in Michigan, it's not going to happen. I mean, I think it starts with a little bit of the governor. The governor, I don't think, does a very good job of trying to contain things to begin with. And when you let things go, it's really a problem. Look at what happened in Portland, for example, when they decided they're going to defund the police and they're not going to allow things to be run properly. Sometimes it's very hard. If you have a fire that started, if you get to it early and you see, okay, I can put out that fire, it's great. But if you just let it spread, it becomes a very difficult thing to handle. Had he allowed maybe the Guard to come in, National Guard to come in, it might have helped, but he let it stew and let it brew.
Would you allow National Guard troops to come into Michigan if you felt it was needed or the president ordered them in?
In the event that I need help, I'm going to probably call on help. I'm not going to let people get killed because it brews like that. One thing to keep in mind, a lot of the problems that we engender are engendered because we didn't get to them early. Mm-hmm. And you have to really have a pretty good environment. You know, take Michigan. Michigan, for example, we have a Democratic governor, and I'm not saying she did a great job, but she never would allow it to stew like this. And we, in history, are not going to typically allow that to happen. I think the guy has a real issue. So I'm not going to go talking and campaigning about Minneapolis.
Yeah. Let me ask you about some of the issues that are facing Michigan. The state lagging behind in terms of education. Do you have any kind of plan to improve kids' reading and math scores?
That's one of the major issues.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, I think if you look up the numbers, we spend $24,500 per student. I think we rank right around number 5 in the country in spend. And yet we're 44th in the country in our effectiveness. And part of that has to do with the basic programs that we have. Now, that's a quality issue in and of itself. And it's very important to recognize that there are techniques that we can use. We know that phonics is effective, but again, you have to get to the kids early. Let's start the program very early on. It's much harder to deal with a situation when the people get to 8th grade and they have no basics, and now we're trying to get to them in 8th grade and high school. We have to start very early on in the process and systematically ameliorate what goes on.
Are you saying spending differently rather than spending more?
Well,
attacking the problem in a different spot?
And yes, we have to have a slightly different approach. And I believe that is a huge factor. You know, we have some very good teachers too.
Yeah.
So it's a combination of things working together. And if we don't have a basic plan that makes sense, then obviously we ought to modify that plan. And we can look at the research on that. We can see that we can do an awful lot to help. But a lot of it starts with the idea of gaining quality in everything that we do and spending less. And my goal is really efficiency and quality. Because you have to also recognize, very important point, right now, we have people that are hurting financially. We have people that are paying attention to the cost of living, and we want to make it better for them. So my basic goal was quite simple. I want to go and lean government so that it's more efficient, do what I do for businesses, and I want to save people money so that I can eliminate the income tax. I can't eliminate the income tax without cutting services if I do not have a good approach on efficiency. So it starts with the idea of being efficient and systematically finding a way where we can get $4,747 per year into the hands of every family. Now, that is the relative savings on an average that they'll have in their pocket, tax-free. And the state income tax is a very regressive tax. You're paying this tax whether you make $10,000 a year or whether you make $10 million a year.
So you think you can cut that, or you're not sure?
I think we could eliminate the income tax.
You do think you can? Okay.
Oh, yeah. And it's something that can be done and has been done. Look at what happened to Tennessee. Tennessee, just like Michigan.
10 seconds. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Declining population. They cut the income tax and eliminate it. It soars. Yeah. Where did Ford put their plant? In Tennessee, not even in Michigan.
Perry Johnson, we appreciate the time this morning very much. Good luck with the campaign.
Thanks.
We're right back with more Flashpoint after this. Before we go this morning, I was able to moderate a fireside chat this week with DTE CEO Joi Harris and talk about several things, including her vision for the company, why rate hikes are being requested, and can it handle this influx of data centers? Here's part of that discussion. When I toured DTE for an interview, I think about a year ago this time, it was amazing to see what inside kind of the war room is when you look at the grid and how the upgrades have been there, going almost from an analog system to a totally digital system. How has that paid off since you put that in place?
Oh, it's paid off tremendously. If you look at the reliability performance over the last couple of years, from 23 to 24, reliability has improved by 70%. So the time spent without power improved by 70%. From 24 to 25, we saw a huge improvement, another 60%. In fact, for 2025, this has been the best reliability performance we've had in over 20 years.
When you were just talking a minute ago, you said over the next 10 years, I'm sure a lot of minds immediately went to, yes, things like data centers and being able to handle those places, because it's not just, we have, I think, almost 60 already in the state, but now it's these larger ones. When you see these coming in, how do you work with these companies when people worry about their rates going up because of it?
Yeah, listen, here's how this works. One, DTE has an obligation to serve any customer, whether it's a data center, a residential customer, anyone who wants to attach to the grid. We have an obligation to serve them. And so when those customers show up at our doorstep, we understand their needs, we understand their demand, and we make sure we have the infrastructure in place that can support them. And they have to cover the cost of that infrastructure if it's incremental to what we already have. And so the law requires those customers to take on those costs. The more load that we bring onto the system, and that fixed cost then gets shared across larger customer base. That's how it works, and that's how data centers and other large load customers, economic development drives down rate hikes over time. It spreads out that fixed cost and allows us to make the necessary investments that will carry us into the future.
And we're still confident the grid can handle all those extra customers?
We are confident, very confident. We study the grid routinely. We're bringing on new renewables every day, in fact.
My thanks to Joi Harris for that, and my other guests this morning, Perry Johnson and John James. We're going to be preempted by the Olympics the next few Sundays, but in the meantime, drop me a line at flashpoint@clickondetroit.com. Let me know what issues you'd like us to tackle here. Obviously, we're going to turn the heat up on these big races, but what else is on your radar? Feel free to reach out. That's Flashpoint for this Sunday. I'm Jason Colthorpe. We'll see you later.